Hey, this is Jonathan Gilliam. I'm just about to start the show, and I wanted to give you your Tuesday tasking. And it's a very simple one, but I think it's something that's needed right now. We are home more than we've ever been. I mean, we all live like homeless people with homes, right? So many people are not working. So many people are living in fear of what's coming down the pipe in a month or two. They're worried now again about the virus, even people who've had it. We don't know who to trust and who to listen to. But here's what I want you to do. Start with today, and if you can do it tomorrow and the next day, do that. But just once, when you're going to complain about something, and it's very easy to complain about a lot of things right now because we have nothing but time to complain, what I want you to do is just don't complain about it. When you feel it's about to come out of your mouth and it's in your brain and you're just about to engage, just let it go. If you're analyzing somebody else's behavior and you're fixing to lay it all out of what they did wrong, just let it go. Just for today and see how it feels. I have a feeling it's going to make life a lot simpler and the emotions are going to be a lot more stable if we just stop complaining. Doesn't do us any good anyway. Not really much we can change right now. And let's start the show. This is Jonathan Gilliam back on the Experts Podcast. Happy Tuesday. The truce has arrived. And it's an interesting Tuesday. It seems like everybody's going crazy. I mean, honestly, there's so much weirdness going on in this world, in this country. I had the honor yesterday of being a part of a panel speaking to members of the Italian parliament. And it was interesting as I was listening to these gentlemen, incredible guys, and what an honor. My roommate in college was from Genoa, so Roberto, that's where I learned how to say that. And the only other things I know how to say in Italian is I know how to sing a happy birthday in Italian because I worked in an Italian restaurant in Pasadena, California years and years ago. And then when Roberto's brother would come over and stay at the apartment in the middle of the night, you would hear, Roberto, basta, silenzio. So he would always tell him to shut up and be quiet because he snored. So that's all the Italian I basically know. But it was interesting talking to these guys today because, I mean, I knew that this stuff that's happening is happening everywhere, but it really started to make sense to me as to how organized and wide and spread and far the breadth and width of this subversive movement, this global coup d'etat, it's moving faster and going places that you just would never think. I mean, Italy, with the thousands of years of culture in Italy, and they are suffering from the same thing. Of course, a lot of the stuff that we talked about today had to do with economics and freedom of speech and how that's being suppressed. But the reality is, whether it's China and how much China is involved in all of this, I think it's clear to say that they are very involved with it. It is organized, and they are going after, of course, after religion. They're going after freedom of speech. And I'm talking about the leftists. I'm talking about communism, socialism, fascism, globalism, progressivism, all these isms. They're all involved. It's all the same Don't be fooled. One of the things that was very interesting, I talked about this yesterday, was this show I watched about on Netflix about coup d'etats and how to carry out a coup. It's interesting that they were having that on Netflix, but when everybody that they showed who had carried out a coup, they were different types of people. Some of them were communists, some of them were fascists, some of them were just crazy, and some of them were monarchs. But they all carried out these coups d'etats, and there were certain characteristics about all of them that were very similar. As I talked to these Italian parliament members today, and I listened to them give their little speeches and talk about the different aspects of the economy and how dependent they are on China, and how the EU has gotten itself into a position like one country will manufacture the machines that China uses to manufacture stuff, right? Goods. So this country in the European Union manufactures the machines that they use in China. So they are never going to vote against China. They're never going to go against them. Purely economical. That particular country is not ideologically aligned with China. They are just economically attached to them. And so they won't go against. See, and that's a real problem. And we're seeing that all over the place. There's a lot of stuff about 5G. Everybody, that's conspiracy theorist is freaking out about 5G. And it comes and goes. It wanes where people are more worried about it and then they're not worried about it. Here's the thing you got to worry about with 5G. I don't think you're going to get radiation poisoning and all this stuff is going to happen. My take on that from an investigative standpoint is that if it was as bad as the conspiracy people out there saying, I know a lot of people that I know that are freaked out about 5G and they're going to say, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. Well, I mean, you're going out on a limb there to think that all scientists, some of them would definitely turn their backs on the truth, but not all scientists. And at least one would come out and say, whoa. And if it was bad enough, why would they put this stuff out there? Listen, everything I say about 5G, somebody's going to have something to come back on it. The point is, that's the least of your worries, whether that's true or not. The reality is with 5G is it is a Chinese technology. And these companies that are Chinese companies that are involved with 5G there's no doubt, there's just 100% guarantee that they will be involved in collecting information by the use of 5G, just like they do with TikTok and all their little apps that they're involved with. They use those to spy. And that's exactly what they're going to do when it comes to 5G. The dependency on 5G is going to be so great that people will compromise, just like the people who make the machines in that one country over in European Union they're going to compromise ideologically what they may feel for the purpose of making money. I mean, that's how China got so powerful. And one of the things about China, which just kind of popped into my head today when I was talking, is that China is the same as if you bought a baby boa constrictor, right? And you from a very tiny size up until this big, gigantic boa constrictor, you raise this snake. Now, I've never had a pet snake. I like snakes, but I've never had a pet snake. But I know people who do, and it's not like the snakes freak out and bite them or strangle them all the time. It happens from time to time, but the potential is always there. And the bigger that snake would get, the more potential it has for danger. And overall, the more powerful the snake becomes, because if a boa constrictor decides it's not having a good day and it wraps around you, it's going to be a bad day for you. It's going to be a bad day for you. And so as China grew and everybody fed China and they put all their stock in China and they put everything over there because China did it cheaper. And how do they, this is the most ironic part of this, okay? How do they do it cheaper? Well, they use slave labor and conscripts and they just don't pay a whole lot of money. So people literally take what they can get, and they work these crappy warehouse jobs or manufacturing jobs. Why do you think all the people from Apple were killing themselves? Because it's not fun work working on one of those assembly lines. Nike's the same way. Basically run sweatshops over in China. So what has happened with China is that because of this looking the other way kind of compromise with them in order to get stuff done cheap, which China continued to offer, China became more powerful and their economy became more powerful. And just like the boa constrictor, they are wrapped around everybody that has anything to do with China, and they are starting to constrict. They're starting to flex their power because ultimately China's never really changed in a lot of ways. They are still this emperor nation, and they're hell-bent on, they believe that they are the powerful beings in the universe. And that's really what it ultimately always comes down to with these groups, whether it's, Black Lives Matter or communism, or which are kind of the same, or China. The power is the central drive, that motivation that motivates these leftists to carry out their ideological subversion. So again, as I talked to these three gentlemen from the Italian parliament, one thing that kept standing out to me is that they continue to talk about how the leftists in their government are completely aligned with China, and how exactly what we see here is happening there. And there's no mistake that these things are they are organized and they are related. It's not like, roads around the world, right? They're pretty much the same width. And a lot of the rules are the same because there's only a certain amount of rules that you can have. And once they are created and they're effective, city planners will see those and they'll use the same. Also, cars, by the way that they are designed side by side, are typically a certain width. And that's the way that basically roads are created now, how they came about and the width of those roads, how fast the turns are. There's an average speed at which a lot of these turns, like on the freeway, for instance, it's not like the Autobahn where maybe they have banked turns. The most turns are made for a certain speed. And it's made logically, and they're copied logically, and it's done all the way around the world because of logic. But it is organized. It is organized, or else it would not spread around the world. Now, but that organization doesn't even hold a candle to the organization that we see with the communist movement around the globe. And talking to these gentlemen from Italy, man, it just hit me right in the face. And the problem is that none of the people that are conservative and in the right, and in the correct mindset, and they see the truth, they are not looking at, just like I talk about in Sheep No More, The Art of Awareness and Attack Survival. That's my best-selling book. I tell people how to look at themselves, divide their lives into sectors, and target each sector from the attacker's point of view. You first have to identify the attacker. Who are they? Why they would attack? When they would attack, and where it would be carried out, and how it would be carried out. That's how you figure this out. Now, none of these countries are looking at China and saying, okay, how does China look at us? What are their tactics? Can we predict those tactics? And you basically can. There's only a finite number of things that China can do to countries. But it's not being done that way. People are not looking at how China looks at them. And so that's how we get ourselves into these situations. It's also the same thing with the radical leftists. I don't like to use the word radical. The leftists all around the globe, very similar, same type of mindset, call themselves the same, dress the same, and the same longing ideologically, which is, again, very, very, I don't know how did young people and even older people get convinced that the thing that has failed historically and driven people to rise up in the name of freedom again and again and again, how can they then turn around and embrace this movement? It's kind of mind-blowing when we think about that. If you're intelligent enough to realize that, and I don't really think that's dependent on liberal or conservative, I think somebody who's intelligent can look at what's happening right now and say, no, this isn't right. Historically, this doesn't work. I may be a liberal or I may be conservative, but this just doesn't work. Now, when I got off the meeting with these three gentlemen from the Italian Parliament and learned so much, I went, of course, I started doing my research for this show. And that was in between flying my drone and working out. I live a very complicated life. So I go and I start looking at the headlines. And it's unbelievable. The same exact thing that I was talking to these gentlemen from the Italian Parliament today, warning them that they need to forward think, not just China, but the leftists around the world, because the same thing that's happening there has happened in Australia, it's happened in South Africa, it's happening here, and no one is forward thinking this and trying to stop it. I'm looking at the headline today. Pataki, who used to be the governor of New York, he said for the first time ever, he fears for the future of New York City. I mean, I left New York City in April after 15 years of living in the same tiny apartment, paying way too much rent for that. And it was heartbreaking leaving there. That's where I raised my dogs. That's where I was at when I was in the FBI and when I broke into media and wrote my book, Sheep No More, there. I mean, a lot of memories in that place. The Team Little Bigs, the Adventures of Team Little Bigs, a parent's book for children, wrote that with Daniel Kreiner, who did all the illustration there. I was sitting on my couch in that apartment when Captain Sullenberg landed his plane on the water. I was coming back from a meeting and I stopped by my apartment to grab something to eat before I went back to the office. And I'm sitting down and I just took 2 bites out of a burrito that I made myself. And I see on Fox News that an airplane had crashed in the water. And I'm thinking it's a small airplane. I don't know why we always assume that. And then they come back and said, no, this is not a small airplane. This is a 737, I think is what it was. And I just drop everything, jump in my car and drive down. I literally drove 10 blocks to the crash scene from where I lived. I have so many memories from this apartment. I was on a Saturday, I'd walk my dogs down in the park and I hear all these sirens going. I'm like, something's happening. Something is definitely happening. I get up and I look on the news, or I'm down at the park, so I pull up the news on my phone, and there had just been a helicopter and an airplane collided over the Hudson River. Again, 20 blocks from where I live. Lived, and I jumped in my car, went down there, and I was the only FBI agent there for that incident, and was there on the dive boat, the New Jersey State Police dive boat, photographing the scene as they're pulling people out of the water. It was tragic. Another thing, let's see, what else? I was sitting, it was Valentine's Day of, I believe that's 2010. I'll have to check that out real quick. But I was sitting on my couch, and I'm looking this up. I'm sure it was 2010, yeah. So 2010, the Times Square bomb that was planted there, and by Faisal Shahzad, and I'm sitting on my couch. I had a beer already in me, just cracked another one, and I hear the most horrific combination of sirens and horns by the firefighters come screaming down the road that I lived on in Manhattan. And I knew something was up. There was such an urgency in the way that they were blasting that horn versus a siren to get through traffic. And I was like, something's up here. So I called the office, and there was a car bomb sitting in Times Square. Because I'm the special events coordinator, and so that means on any incident, I'd be the guy that goes down there and helps coordinate all our incoming assets, because I've already done threat assessments on all these areas and had predicted over 2 years before that this would probably be a place by the Marriott where fundamental Muslims would try to put a car bomb on a Saturday. I predicted. I told my SAC about it. Said I think that's probably where that's going to happen. I was the second FBI agent there. All these memories from my apartment and from New York City. And I left. Because I saw what was happening. Governor Pataki is just now seeing that. But I think Governor Pataki, who I've met and I think is a great guy, is now seeing the reality. And in a lot of ways, it's almost too little too late. I think a lot of New Yorkers are hopefully realizing that if you vote, and this is something that I hope everybody takes away from this show and realizes, I hope they're learning this. If you vote for a political party because ideologically you feel like they tell you what what you want to hear, and you just vote strictly for that political party. I used to know somebody who was pro-choice, for pro-abortion, and they would never vote for Republican, even though every other aspect of their life was conservative. They would not vote Republican. They always voted Democrat. If that's the way you vote, you in New York City are responsible for de Blasio. You are responsible for Cuomo, both of who are criminals. And many other cities and states around this country where leftists run the show. You all voted them in. So as I go through these headlines, as I do, and I talk about this every day, the big thing that is sticking out to me now, especially today, for some reason, the headlines today are just extremely over the top. It's like social media. It's like somehow all the nasty and vile and just smart ass type of tweets and posts have now become mainstream media. I mean, for instance, Pelosi, who you think would have some standards that she lives by because of the office that she holds as Speaker of the House, she makes the headline says Pelosi says Trump may have to be fumigated out of the White House. I mean, is that appropriate for the Speaker of the House to be saying that? I think it's a perfect sign of the times of all, first it was social media where all these people just say stuff all the time that get them literally punched right in the face if they were in person saying the things that they said. They'll never say that stuff in person. They're not tough enough. And eventually it backfire. They get hurt. In potential, I mean, there's been cases where, where people have met up that were, arguing back and forth and somebody gets killed. It's funny because the truckers were the first ones to do this with the CB radios. You'd hear fights all the time. My stepdad, who was a truck driver for like 40 years, would talk about how, every once in a while, these guys would pull over and fight because they got in a fight on the CB radio. But this is kind of, it's now morphed into the headlines. The people who write the news are just as sensational and full of fake bravado as the people who are writing tweets and posts. One of the polls that they took from the Washington Examiner, and they have it on Drudge Report, headline, Joe would knock out Donald in boxing match. Is that appropriate? I mean, I'm not the most appropriate guy in the world, but that's what we call news now. And along with these headlines, what I'm also seeing are decisions that are getting crazier and crazier all the time. The Associated Press, where tons of the news that you get daily comes from the Associated Press. And I used to think that the AP was very neutral. They were a news organization, so they reported headlines. Now, whether or not that's true, I don't know for sure, but that was my perception of them. Now, AP says that it will capitalize black, but not white. We have gone to the 60s and backwards. Except what's happened is, see, this is the danger of activists, is that activists, a lot of them, when you give them the power that they are seeking, they immediately turn around and hammer whoever they were standing against. A good example of that is the gay rights movement. Everybody knows, and I've caught heat from so-called Christians that are telling me that, I shouldn't be giving gay people a free pass when it comes, that I should be judging them for their sin. First of all, we can talk about that anytime really, but I don't feel I was sent to this earth to judge. Whether I agree with it or not, it's not my position to judge. My position is to share the light of Christ and to be a servant to him and this nation and the Constitution that God granted us and those rights that he granted us. So when people write me, and I've had a couple people write me because of my stance on this, they're wrong. Everything that they cite is wrong. Now, with that little rant, the main point that I was trying to make here is that the gay movement for gay marriage, right? And these are activists, none just the same. There's the people who want or need, and there's the activists who get up and actually do what needs to be done in order to get what those people need or want. And the special interest activists are the worst, because ultimately what happens is you finally give into their power needs, and they then wield the power like a dictator, like a fascist. Gay marriage was legalized when Obama was in office, and they fought and fought and fought for that, and they finally got it. Okay, fine, you got it. Let's bury that hatchet and move forward. But no, they had to immediately go after people who did not agree with the way that they live and didn't want to serve them pizza for a wedding, a gay wedding. They immediately went after people like this, the gay activists, in order to cut them down. And see, this is the problem of what's going on here. You give people what they ask for, activists, and activists will want power beyond equality. They want power beyond equality, and it happens every single time. So when you see the headlines and when you see the rudeness, the uncouth behavior that you're seeing on here, it is a sign of a 180-degree turn where you make recognitions, you try to fix things, and the activists take that and they go a mile with it. Now, one of the other things that I'm seeing, and that I've talked about quite a bit, is how this virus, when you look at the majority, even Fox News, when you look at the majority of the reporting on this, which, I mean, if you look at all these online publications, and I would say the majority of people do get their information from online or from breaking news, or young people actually get it from memes, believe it or not. But the lies are so far out of control that we don't even know what to believe anymore. I mean, for instance, which I've talked about before on here, Cuomo and 5 other governors are responsible for over 60,000 deaths. Cuomo, the New York governor, the governor of Pennsylvania, the governor of New Jersey, the governor of Michigan, and the governor of California. because they put COVID positive patients in elderly clinics, they killed over 60,000 people. Right now, the death rate in the United States as of 5 a.m. Tuesday morning is 140,000. Now, 60,000 deaths in these elderly clinics around the country. 60,000 is a pretty low ball number. It's probably way higher than that. But they're not equating this to the reality of people who got the disease and died. Yes, the people in the retirement or in these elderly clinics, rehabilitation, I use that word lightly, rehabilitation clinics got COVID and died. But they wouldn't have gotten it had they not been exposed to it by somebody who was placed there by the governors. And these are the people who are most susceptible to it. So the numbers shot through the roof. 140,000 deaths, 140,957 deaths in the United States as of 5:01 a.m. We know that at least, at a minimum, 60,000 of those deaths are from these governors. 5 governors, probably more. But these 5 governors that made the decision to put these people in there. So even that number is not correct. Now, so it's 80,000 people that have died from this disease. And the number, according to everything that they're saying on here, Florida and several other places are just out of control how many people are getting it. So if that is the case and the numbers of cases is skyrocketing, the deaths, when you take away the elderly people who wouldn't have gotten it had they not been exposed knowingly, would be 80,000 people right now that have died from the virus that are being added to the count instead of protecting the elderly. And so where I'm going with this is that the headlines, along with being, it's mimicking social media, along with being in your face, nasty, rude, people saying stuff that they would never say in person, just like social media, is also now there's more lies than there is truth. And it's very hard to detect the reality of what's happening and where it's going, where this virus is going, or what's happening in politics. It's just all lies. Which is very interesting because when you compare and contrast that, right, to 51 years ago, yesterday, 51 years ago, Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin were on the face of the moon while Michael Collins orbited just above them around the moon. That was 51 years ago. And that was an era, that was an era when people put their mind to something, they actually did it. And it was an era when moving forward meant achieving great things. And that just has gone away. Now, achieving great things is telling other people how they should live and making sure that you oppress them so hard that they just can't be free because you want your ideology in place. That's what's happened globally, not just in the United States. And like I talked yesterday about people, that are very, very wealthy, and they're combining that with leftist power, or they're gaining power. Bezos made $13 billion in a single day recently. $13 billion in a single day. Should that man, unless he's completely overt about it, should he be allowed to flood the political arena with subversives? I don't think so. It's dangerous what's happening right now. Right now, we're in a state in this country and in the nation, in the world, that closely mimics what was going on in Europe when Hitler just rose to power. The economics are going to get worse if we don't unlock this freaking place. People are going to start starving because they're not going to have jobs. And just like I predicted, late August, early September is where this is just going to explode. It's going to get bigger because remember, the elections are in November. So the more that the earlier they can start, the better at causing chaos and disarray. They're already doing it now, but they're going to start piling that on. Trust me on that. It's already starting to show. Now, I tell you what, let's take a break for a second. I'm going to play a commercial. We're going to come back, and I'm just going to cover one other thing. But it's going to be a shorter show today because I'm looking at the news, and this happens when I look at the news day in day, and then I sit here and research all night looking for these gems and for something to stand out to me. One thing did stand out, and that's what I'm going to talk about when I come back. We'll be right back. I know I talk a lot about my books on this show, but I just want to make sure that if you have not checked out Sheep No More, The Art of Awareness and Attack Survival, and its 2 workbooks that go with it, that you at least go check it out. You can go on and listen to the first, 2 minutes of it on Amazon if you just click on listen here, and you can at least hear what I'm saying. The important thing that you have to take away from this is that this book, like no other, is going to show you how attackers look at you and teach you how to look at yourself the same way, how to divide your life into sectors, how to target each sector with that knowledge and understanding, those tactics, techniques, and procedures. And then the workbooks allow you to do your own threat assessment on every aspect of your life, and then take that information and put it into the defense assessment workbook. Now, along with that, I designed, along with Danielle Kreiner, a children's book called The Adventures of Team Little Bigs, a parent's book for children. And it's a book of pictures that you can give your child, and in the pictures are embedded security, safety, awareness, and communication lessons. And the parent, you can go to teamlittlebigs.com and download the lesson plans. So what you literally have is a way to teach your child non-verbally. They can sit there and look at the books, and you can point to those pictures and really start them off at a very, very young age, helping them to understand what they should do, what they shouldn't do, and how to communicate these things. Sheep No More, The Art of Awareness and Attack Survival was written for, I would say, people 10 years and up. Definitely for an adult to understand the world that they live in. And The Adventures of Team Little Bigs, a parent's book for children, was written with those children in mind so we can start them out young to understand what they need to do to stay safe and how to communicate these things. Trust me, folks, I did this for you, and I hope that you'll go check them out, because this is how you secure your homeland. The Adventures of Team Little Bigs and Sheep No More. Go get them. And let's get back to the show. Okay, so the good news is this podcast is getting closer and closer to 100,000 downloads, and it's starting to grow exponentially. The views are up. The feedback is incredible. And although some shows like this are going to be a little shorter, just because I'm not going to sit here and try to talk about and make the news sound like it's bigger than it is. Although I guess I could on days like this go into something other than the news. It's just today, I don't know if it's the fact that I got up so early and did this thing with the Italians, but I'm just out of it today. And I'm frustrated. To be honest with you, this is one of those days. That's why I started the show off talking about how not complaining. I just have felt all day that I'm over it. And I know you all probably feel the same way. I mean, it's gotten to a point where, gyms are closed. You can't just do something simple like go to a gym. You can't, although I do see a lot of people traveling. In New York State, the freaking turd Cuomo tells everybody that there's 20-something states that if they go there and come back on a plane, you have to fill out a form. If you don't fill it out, you could either be arrested or pay a $2,000 fine. And then if you drive somewhere, they're saying now that you must fill out the same form or something like that about where you've been. Meanwhile, Cuomo goes to Georgia. And I guess he went there today. I don't know if he's back yet. He went there because it had something to do with ventilators. I mean, there's something that he could have done over Zoom or something. But he goes there in person. Very odd. But I can guarantee you he's not going to quarantine. He's not going to quarantine because and I've done several shows on this, these people are not leaders. They are narcissists who have gotten in power. They're very dangerous. Cuomo is at first I thought this guy is, kind of getting it. He's getting along with the president. He's forward thinking things, but it's gotten to a point now where these governors and mayors, they treat the people like they're 17 years old and they're their parent. And you can't treat free people like this. I mean, we've shown that it doesn't matter if you quarantine or stay in the house or whatever. Eventually, it's going to come around where you live, no matter what you do. And you may very well get it. But the way that these governors and mayors are running the country is it's sickening, the way that they treat people. It's not like they're even having a discussion. It's like they're saying, you will do this, and that is the final answer. You're not doing anything else, young man, young lady. That's the way they act. And it's insulting. It's very insulting to the people of this country. Now, this is the other thing I wanted to say. And I'm going to leave you with this, I think. Life is a mystery. Okay, the reason these things happen and people have lost loved ones, it seems like a mystery. I think it's very clear about life, but a lot of my clarity comes from, suffering, growing up poor, doing these different things in the military, which people have asked me to talk about the difference between Ranger and SEAL training, which I went through both, and I'll discuss that in a future podcast, maybe this week. But one thing I learned, I went through officer candidate school. It was very challenging for me. I came from nothing. I was only one in my family to go to college. And I was learning as I went along. I don't like to say making it up as I went along because I don't make things up. I was learning as I went along. I wasn't taught a lot of this stuff before I actually engaged in it. I just had a mom who told me that I could be whatever I wanted to be, and I believed it. And then proved it. But I had to learn along the way. Everything, how to study, everything. So officer candidate school for me was a real challenge. It was a tremendous challenge for me. In fact, I guess I felt like it wasn't enough challenge. So I failed the first test, the first written test in officer candidate school. I was the president of the class. And I failed the first test. If you fail a test in officer candidate school, which is 13 weeks, it was then anyway, you're then on the bubble. And if you fail another test, you're gone. So for 12 of the 13 weeks, I think it was either 13 or 18 weeks, but 13, I'm going to say 13. So for almost the entire time I was there, I was on the bubble. And it probably worked out better for me because I definitely learned how to study thanks to Butler and Feldman, who helped me out quite a bit. But officer candidate school was very difficult, and I grew up a lot there. Gunnery Sergeant Crouch, who was my drill instructor, who was John Crouch, who's just an amazing guy. You know, I'm on Facebook with him now, and a lot of his trainees. He molded us from nothing, and he broke us down. Oh my gosh, did he break us down? And then I went to Buds, to SEAL training. And that was, you know, if you get there early, and because it starts at a certain time, this is your class update, the class starts here. But you may graduate from another school, and then you have to report there early. In my case, 2 months, almost 2 months early. So overall in Buds, I was there for 10 months, 6-month course. And by the end of that, I was a hard individual. You know, having gone through officer candidate school and been on the bubble for the entire time, and then and having, you know, wanting to be the president of the class and being voted in there, and then failing a test, and I had to give that up. I mean, I couldn't concentrate on the task of being president because I had to concentrate on the task of graduating from officer candidate school. Otherwise, I was done before I even got through. In Buds, it's the biggest suck factor you will ever experience in a human life. We even had a class where nobody graduated, was the class that never was. On average, you know, between 15 and 25% of the people that start the class finish it. And I became a very hardened individual. When I say hardened, I could sustain and still can sustain a tremendous amount of physical anguish and even mental anguish, and still focus on what needs to get done. And so that's when I graduated from Buds, that's who I had become. And so when I went to Ranger School, I checked into SEAL Team 4, went through jump school, and then Army Airborne School, and then I went back to the team and went through SEAL tactical training, I believe, or was waiting to go through it. I'm not sure which one it was. And my platoon sent me to Army Ranger School because it's an incredible leadership course. It wasn't my platoon that sent me there. It was the team. And the captain, Pete Van Hoosier, he sent me there. And he wanted me to write a paper when I got back about my experience at Ranger School. And when I left, I was like, yeah, this isn't going to be good. And then when I got there, and when I was there, you know, a week, what I realized, I could milk everything that there was great about Ranger School out of it because I'd already dealt with the misery and the pain and the stress. I'd already dealt with it. And so when I was in Ranger School, I had fun, and I was able to, I mean, listen, it was a suck factor. I lost 22 pounds. I went from, I don't know, like 190 something and down into the 70s again, which when I graduated high school, I just put a picture up of me that shows the difference between graduating Buds and graduating from Ranger School. Even though Buds was 10 months long, Ranger School was only 62 days long. I lost, they say when you graduate from Ranger School, you've lost an average of 20 pounds. You have the same amount of vitamins in your system as somebody who's been dead for 3 days, and you have the immune system of a severe burn victim because they only feed you once a day and you sleep 2 hours a night for 62 days while you're moving and burning thousands and thousands and thousands of calories. So there's a calorie deficiency there, and you lose a tremendous amount of weight. You get no sleep, and so you cannot think clearly. And they try to teach you how to be a leader in war. And having gone through officer candidate school and then through Buds and then showing up to this, this interesting and unique school, what I discovered is that I'd already been through the hard part. I'd already been through the challenge. I'd already had my soul taken out, scrubbed on a scrubber, and then put back in me, pristine white and full of knowledge and understanding, but haven't had gone through the torment of being broken down. And it is a torment to be broken down. So when I got to Ranger School, I didn't have to be broken down. I just I didn't buy into the yelling. I didn't buy into the games. I saw the games. I saw the yelling, but I was so focused on what do you want me to do? What would you have me do? Why are you doing this? And then I saw the games that they played next to that. And I was able to decipher that information on what they are actually looking for. And sometimes they weren't looking for anything. They're just wanting to hammer you. And I could see that. And I would take the hammering and move forward. And the reason I'm bringing this up is that I believe right now is an incredible time for us to learn. Because one thing I definitely learned from having gone through officer candidate school and SEAL training and then going to Ranger school, what I learned is that the instructors know more than I do. And these are not new schools. It's not like they just made them up. There's a whole system. I've heard from BUD/S instructors that everything down to the minute is already that day and long before that, because they repeat this cycle of tremendous torture and weeding out who needs to be there and who doesn't. But it's broken down to the minute. They know what they're doing and how long they can do it. Even the beatings that we get, and it seems like it's a random thing that they're saying and they're just going off on us. It is all by design. But they know secrets about things that we don't. And so when I started thinking about the mystery of God, how everybody said God works in mysterious ways, and you may not understand why things are happening to you, but God has a plan. Now, I'm not speaking for God. Heaven forbid, I'm not anybody who can wield his knowledge and wisdom. But what I'll tell you is what I know. That it's not that complicated a lot of the times. The mystery lies in the fact that God knows and you don't. I mean, he can create an entire universe, and that universe could be held to our physical standards, our physics. And it could all just be a lie, which also happens in all these trainings in the military. They'll tell you one thing, it's a complete lie, because they're just putting stress on you, putting pressure on you. They actually know the secrets. They know the truth. They know why this is being done to you. But they're not going to tell you, because you have to go through it in order to prove that you can be trained, trusted, and won't quit. And when I see this great mystery of God, who I love very much and believe in with all my heart, I'm starting to see that it may not be such a mystery as it is God has the truth and I don't. He's got the knowledge and I don't. He's got the wisdom and I don't. But my goal is to go through these things and to continue to learn and to seek knowledge and to seek his guidance. And eventually, whether it's in this world or the next one, those things will be revealed. But what I see happening with a lot of people right now is that they are like I was in officer candidate school or in the beginning of BUD/S. You've never experienced anything like happening right now in the world, and you're in disarray, and you don't know which way is up or down. But the magical and incredible thing about this is that you may not be expected to make it through all the way and learn everything. The sheer fact that you are sticking to it, or you're clinging to your faith when things are all bad, your faith in God, and he will restore you. But it may not be as mysterious as we think. I'm sure there's a ton of mystery about God. Definitely mystery. But the things that you are facing right now may not be that mysterious. It may just be that you are meant to learn something. And like I was in officer candidate school, you are not experienced enough to be able to decipher and discern where you're supposed to go and how you're supposed to be and what you're actually supposed to be worried about. Later on, after you go through these things, you will be more educated, and you will not be driven by the same motivators. You will not be held back by that same lack of knowledge, because what happens when you get it and when you figure it out, and what I'm talking about figuring out, when you figure out that what you're going through is not life, it's a test for life. When you realize that this is a course to teach you the fundamentals of living, it tests your faith to see if you're worthy. It tests your ability to see if you can learn. And it tests you to see if you will stay in the game or if you are going to quit God. When you realize that, what you're going to start to feel and see is that the world is not that mysterious. You just have this to go through. And if you don't know why, it's because God doesn't want you to know why. He wants you to be obedient and go through it and deal with it and turn to Him all the way with His guidance. Just like the instructors in all these courses. Again, when I went through officer candidate school and when I got the buds, I was not a hard individual. I had not been hardened. I had not been broken down properly by life before I got to officer candidate school. And what Gunnery Sergeant Crouch did, John Crouch, in breaking me and others down, is he started the understanding, not of everything, but the understanding of how to learn, about how to look through the stress, how to deal with the stress, and then figure out what that thing is that you need to be doing and what they're trying to teach you, so that you can master that and master it in stressful situations. So by the time I got to Ranger School, having gone through all this, I was able to have fun with it. I mean, to an extent, but I didn't buy into the games. I knew that those instructors knew more than I did. I knew that they had secrets that I didn't know. It was no longer mysterious. It was just a fact that they're the instructors, I'm the student. They're the teachers, I'm to learn. And they have certain ways of going about, and if they're yelling at me and I've done nothing wrong, or they've pressed an issue where I did something wrong, then I deal with it. And that is basically, I think, out of all the headlines and all the things that you're seeing, and whether or not Durham is ever actually going to indict anybody or charge anybody or whatever, just write a report, which I don't think. The reason I brought that up is because I think it's BS. He's not going to do anything. It's going to be very little. But regardless of what the headlines are, you are ultimately being tested by somebody that knows more than you. And when you realize that and you say, okay, I'm going to push through this, I'm going to continue in my faith and drive forward, what is going to happen is that you are going to have truth and meaning revealed to you. That's the way that works. Because ultimately, folks, remember this, take this away with you from this show today, that the mystery is, in a lot of ways, the fact that God has knowledge that you don't have. And it's meant to be that way. So when you stress about what's happening, you're stressing about the virus, you're stressing about how people around you are stressed, remember, we are going through a process of learning and growing. And if we just exist in this earth comfortably and then died, we would be as useless as a baby. But the way we're going through this now is structured in such a way that it mimics boot camp or SEAL training or any of these things. We have to go through it in order to become the person that God wants us to be. I'm Jonathan Gilliam. This is The Experts. The truth has arrived. Peace, and we're out of here.